Welcome to Chaos to Calm. You have adopted and the honeymoon is over. We are your hosts, Jody Randolph,
and Cindy Schultz,
offering practical advice and natural solutions to adoptive moms while maintaining your sanity.
Or your sense of humor, like Danny said last week,
Yes,
right?
That's exactly right.
Maybe both.
Some of us need to find it again.
Well, we are super excited today because we have yet another adoptive mama and a longtime friend of mine, Launa Stan. She's adopted 3 kiddos, 2 internationally and 1 through foster care. Right? Was he through foster? No, he was through
one internationally, one through emergency, like a pregnancy support center.
That's right.
And 1 through foster care.
Okay. Your number 2 child was in the Middle West.
Yes.
The Midwest. I almost said the Middle East.
She does have an international father.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Launa.
Oh, Launa. Lana's just been such a sweet support. I think we've got her son and my number 3 child, my number 3 adoption. We got them about the same time, and we bonded a lot together because of behaviors, because of different exposures that both of the kiddos had in the womb, and we just bounced a lot of ideas off of each other. And back in the day when, this was how long ago? About 15 years ago. Yeah, yes. and there weren't a lot of supports and stuff. Even the foster care system was totally different then, with the lack of support then, and there's a lot more now. But
yes.
But yeah, so we met at church, and she's just really sweet, and I just want to hear her story. And
well, I used to be sweet.
Yeah, no, you are still sweet.
There's a friend he's recently passed away in the last few years, but Dr. Gregory Keck, who was one of the foremost psychologists in reactive attachment, he told me one day, he came up to me at a conference and he said, "Oh, I talked about you today in my session." And I said, "You did?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, get the CD." So he said something like, I knew this lady, and when we first met, I commissioned her to do a piece of artwork for my organization, and she was all, "We are the world, we are the children." She was getting ready to do her first adoption. She was so sweet. And she goes, she has just adopted her 3rd, and this one was from foster care. And I just had a conversation with her, and she's flaming from every orifice. And I think that's really the truth.
We've all been there.
So tell us a little bit about what led you to adopting your children. And
I'm an artist, and my husband and I actually met in Russia. And so we have had the opportunity to be in a lot of orphanages. I started going to orphanages in Peru, and then Russia, Ukraine, just around the world, and doing humanitarian relief. And so when we were first engaged, I remember going into an orphanage in Russia, and this little curly-haired boy, just beautiful little thing, came up to my husband and grabbed his hand and started talking to him. And we asked the translator, "What is this child saying?" And he was about 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. And he said, "You look like a nice man. You look like you would be a good dad."
Aww.
And we were both like, so broken.
That just breaks your heart.
It does. It does. And so at that point, we, and I had always wanted to adopt. But once we were married, we found out that we could not have biological children. And so that was a disappointment for me, but it was devastating for my husband, because he always did want to have a son, a biological son. So we did not start pursuing the adoption path until he did some healing himself. You don't want to do that. You don't want to adopt with that kind of heartache, because it's not going to go well.
Right.
So then when he came around to the adoption idea, we decided to adopt from Vietnam, and we had been married 2 years at that point. And And it's kind of funny. We were praying, but we didn't know where we were going to adopt. And so we had first thought about Russia and Ukraine because we had been in so many orphanages there. And we know it enough to know the high percentage of children that have fetal alcohol that we were afraid to do that. And I'll be honest, in the back of my mind, I was afraid of Putin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it will go down this path and he'll shut down the country and we won't be able to finish the adoption and I'll be brokenhearted and I don't think we should do this. So he, he's been in power a very long time. And so we were in Toronto at a Vietnamese restaurant and this little girl that was probably 3 or 4 came from a different table and just started flirting and batting her eyes and being adorable. And we both looked at each other and we thought, let's investigate Vietnam. I'd love to have a little girl like that. And so when we investigated, we found out that you only had to be married 2 years. And that kind of was why we pursued Vietnam. And
it's so fun to see God lead you to a certain spot.
Yes.
Because he knows where your child is.
Right. Exactly. And so we started pursuing Vietnam. We got everything together. Our daughter was presented to us when she was a couple of days old.
Oh, wow.
In this beautiful little photograph. I mean, she just beautiful. And if you saw my daughter, she's stunning.
Yeah,
she's
she
breathtaking.
She is.
And so I'm like, oh, this is her. They didn't show us any other children. This was the one. And so I had already met Dr. Gregory Keck, who I mentioned, and read his books, and all of a sudden been informed about reactive attachment disorder and what can happen if a child is left in an orphanage, untended, neglected, which my daughter was. So I wanted to get there right away. And then the agreement between the United States and Vietnam shut down.
Oh, no.
So I spent almost 11 months bawling my eyes out and begging God to let me go get my daughter because damage was being done. And we were never going to get that first year of brain function
development
back.
Yeah.
And also the attachment piece that's so vital. We were not going to get that back. And so right before she turned 11 months old, it opened back up for us. And there was a window, and that window's closed again. But that window opened very briefly for us to go and bring our daughter home.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy that what you were afraid of from Russia happened
Exactly.
in Vietnam.
Actually, what I've been afraid of happened with all my children. One right after the next.
Yeah, well, God was doing something there.
Because even at that point, before we started pursuing Vietnam, I did a piece of artwork. I'll show it to you later. For an organization in Ohio who did fostering and adoption. And I had talked about sitting in on some of their classes. And the director said, oh no, Launa doesn't want any of our children. They're all addicted to drugs. He said that. So I thought, yeah, I don't. And we didn't go down that path, but God has a sense of humor.
Yes, I remember before we adopted researching the FAS and the fetal alcohol and not coming up with a lot of information and going armed we went to Russia and going armed to Russia with my little description of it, not realizing they didn't have to have physical features.
Right.
And praying that we wouldn't get one with fetal alcohol. We have 2 with fetal alcohol.
Yes.
Different degrees.
Yes.
But God knows what we need as moms, plus he knows that we're the mom to help those children.
Yeah, he knows what the children need, what moms they
Right,
really
what
need.
they really need.
Yeah.
Well, early
Even
on.
as we doubt ourselves every single day,
Yes.
God knows that that's what they needed.
Absolutely. And before we had children, before we adopted children, I remember going to a church, and it was on Mother's Day, so I didn't really even want to go.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, during worship, just real bummed out and sad because I knew they're going to honor the mothers, and here I am.
Not a mom.
I'm not a mom. And so I remember squeezing my eyes shut and praying, and I felt like God said to my heart so strongly, I'm going to give you a very special child. And I was like, I think God spoke to my heart. And I'm like, a very special child. And then I went, wait a minute, special? You don't mean special needs. And, he did.
Yeah.
All three of my children are wonderful and perfect, but they all have varying degrees of special needs. And it's not so special sometimes. It's very hard. It's very difficult.
It is very difficult.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
As you deal in the day-to-day, you're in the trenches with those emotions that they have day-to-day and the physical needs they need, and it's hard.
And even if my children didn't have special needs, there's that loss. They've had a huge loss that they don't actually understand when they're young. But especially young girls want to take it out on their adopted mom. They feel that, I would love to be able to rage and be angry with my birth mom, but I can't. So you're the next best thing.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Right.
Right. So
Young boys do that too.
Yes. They do.
Yeah. We laugh. It's so funny. They rage on us, and then we laugh
now because they're a little bit grown up.
Yeah, that's true. So tell us about adoption number 2.
Adoption number 2. We didn't know we were adopting again because I still wasn't getting sleep. Our first daughter got about 3 hours of sleep a night, and then she would spend the rest of the night pushing her toddler bed around the room.
Oh my goodness.
Very hyperactive, extremely reactive attachment, jumping in total strangers' laps and asking what was in their purse. So we were tired, but then she also came from an orphanage, so even at that young age, she was asking for another child. She did not want to be the only child. So I started praying, and I went to an adoption conference with my artwork and had a booth, and this lady showed up with a newborn and a beautiful little girl. And I remember just saying a real quick prayer to the Lord, like, can we start at that point next time, Lord? Like, I want to start at that point because they sleep. They can't run around. It's like, and right after I left that adoption conference, I got a call. I had done a radio interview with a crisis pregnancy center director. And so the next day she called me back, and I thought she was just calling to say thank you for doing the interview. No. She said, Launa, I have a really strange question for you. Are you and Marty, my husband, planning to do another adoption? And I said, we just started praying about that. And she said, well, this is why I'm asking. I have a young lady who will be giving birth in December. She is going to be placing her daughter, and she's asking for very specific things. She would like a Christian household with a mother and a father, but she's asking that this child be raised in an artsy environment. And so I thought of you, because I'm an artist, I'm a poet, and I do this professionally. So I said, oh, we're interested. What do we have to do? And she said, get something together and get it down to an attorney. She's going to be looking at different families, their portfolios. I didn't even have a portfolio, but I put together a paper and ran it down to the attorney and prayed. And so then we heard from the attorney and from this lady, and she said, this young lady chose you, your family. And then there was a backstory. Here was the backstory. When she wrote the description of a family she wanted, she actually was describing us. Never thinking it would be us that would adopt her daughter.
So she already knew you.
So this is what happened. When she was not showing, she may have known she was pregnant already. I'm sure she did. She got a ride into the town that we lived in, and the friend who gave her the ride is a friend of my husband's. My husband and I had our offices together, and so I had a lot of artwork on the wall, and I had a salesperson, and I wasn't there, But this friend said, well, I will give you a ride into town if you'll let me stop by my buddy Marty's office, because we're going to have lunch together after. So he brought her in to meet what would become her future daddy while she was still in the womb.
Oh, wow.
So then Marty was raving about adopting our oldest daughter, and showing pictures. And this young lady thought, well, if he is so happy to be a dad to their adopted child, then maybe I should place.
Oh.
And so when she wrote the description, she was thinking about us.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
And she had such a good relationship with her father. She really wanted this child to have a good father. And so, she chose us. So she told us later, when she was going through the portfolios, they all looked wonderful. And then she saw ours, and her heart just exploded. And so she put it to the side, and she was nice enough to go through the rest of them. But she's like, no, this is my family. This is where my daughter is supposed to be raised. And then she said, Launa, since I can't raise her, I chose someone who would be the closest to me to raise her. And so since then, she has passed away. She got in a very tragic accident when my daughter was 11. And so God knew that was going to happen. Yeah. Because I always thought, why couldn't she try to be a single mom and raise her? But God knew. Yeah. And so I asked her, she said, I had such a difficult time placing her. And she goes, I was praying and I was praying and I was praying. And she said, I felt like the Lord said to my heart, I gave my only son. You can do it. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
And so it was very, very difficult. But before she was killed, I said to her, teaching both of my daughters about abortion and what happens. And I said, neither one of your moms would have ever done that to you. That's why they gave you life, and that's why they placed you for adoption. But I said, could you write her a letter and explain like what happened and how loved she was and how she was so loved that you wanted her to come into a family that could have a mom and a dad, and she did, and we have that beautiful letter. It's like 5 or 6 pages, and it makes me cry every time because she talks about the fact that how loved she was and what kind of a life she wants for her, and it was just so beautiful. And I'm so glad I asked her for that letter, because now my daughter has that for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great.
Beautiful story.
I know. That is so. I'm like
God's
thinking.
handiwork always never ceases to amaze me.
Right.
In everything, but especially in putting together families.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we call her our sweet stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
Like an Oreo cookie.
Right.
On either side of her, it's real crunchy and chocolatey, and a little bit more difficult.
Right.
But she is a real sweetheart. I mean, everyone who meets her walks away and says, "What a special child!" She is a special child.
I remember back in the day when you told me that she really thought George Washington was attractive.
Yeah.
She had this thing for George Washington.
She did.
And I loved going up to her and saying, you want to know who I think is really cute? And she said, who? I said, George Washington. She goes, I know, right? It was just, I love her.
Yeah, she was obsessed with George Washington for about 2 solid years.
Yeah.
And she knew every fact. And I'd be like, but why George Washington? And she'd be like, because he is so cute. and I would say, huh? And she says, I just wish I got to him before Martha did. And you'd be like, you do know he's been dead for over 200 years? So then one day she came to me and she goes, I'm over George Washington. And I was like, good. And she goes, I'm into the Marquis de Lafayette now. And I'm thinking, okay, still white powdered wig, dead.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So fun.
So great.
So that is the child that actually has offered a lot of laughter into the mix.
Right.
And my other two have too. I keep a book. And when things would get really rough, I'd read all the funny things and just laugh and cry. And so I'm really glad that I did that.
That is a terrific idea.
That is.
Yes.
I wish I had done that.
To keep a book and write down the funny things that our kids say, because it happens, but we're so in the middle of all of the stress and the trauma that we don't remember it happening later.
Right. And when you read it years down the line,
water.
it's just even funnier.
Right. Yes.
I have to tell you funny. My youngest, who is biological, and she was probably 6 or 7, and I'm fixing her hair and braiding it. And I said, well, one day you can fix your little girl's hair. She says, Mama, I am not having children. I'm like, why not? They're too much work. I should know. I'm a children. And it was just so funny, the insight into that, because she was seeing the trauma and everything that was happening with her other siblings.
Yes.
Right.
But just that insight. Today she's 17 and still doesn't want kids. But God could change all of that at some point.
True.
It happens.
True. It does happen.
So.
So tell us a little bit about your business that you have, your art.
So I do a style of artwork that's called poetry art. I've been doing it for 30 years. And what I do is I write a poem and then I paint the poetry into the piece. And I started out in California, and for the last 30 years, it's been carried in upwards of 200 galleries across the United States, but also exhibited around the world. And it's from the genesis of this artwork, I dedicated it to the Lord and said, show me who to help, show me how to use the funds, and I'll do it for your glory. And so I've really had a neat opportunity to go in and raise funds for orphanages, for women's ministry, for children with HIV, special needs, like around the world, to use the funds of creating limited edition prints and cards and that sort of thing. And so it has also given me a platform. Gives me a platform to go into places that wouldn't normally invite a Christian or just an average person. So I've been able to exhibit in Iraq.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
I did a really neat exhibit in a community center with other artists who had special needs.
Oh.
And that was extremely exciting, and what a great opportunity. I've gone into high security prisons. I've been in presidential homes, government offices, government home, officials' homes. I've, as a friend of mine used to say, Launa can be with the high and the low with the low. Because I've also been in huts, dirt huts, and it's just been a really neat opportunity, a wonderful gift from the Lord to let me go and, be on this love adventure with my Heavenly Father for other people.
Yeah.
And making that impact where other people might not be able to make that impact.
Well, I've got a voice. I've got a different voice. And with my children, it's given me a deeper voice. You know what I mean? To really speak into broken lives.
Right.
Because I'm extremely broken. And these children are broken.
They are.
And I used to see myself as this beautiful vase. And then that broke. When they talk about God being the potter and us being the clay.
Right.
And I feel that when I came to the Lord, that beautiful ornament on the shelf was smashed. And then I felt like God kind of remade me into like this water pitcher, that could hold a lot of water and I could pour it out to other people. And so for a long time, that's what I was doing. He would pour into me and I would pour into other people. Since my children, I feel that has been broken. And I am a piece of pottery, just a little broken piece of pottery. And that's okay, because now my prayer is, Lord, let me be like that piece of pottery that scraped Job's boils and gave him relief.
Oh, wow.
If I can be that piece of pottery that gives another person relief in that way, it's worth it.
That's beautiful.
Goosebumps. Oh my gosh. All these feels. It's just,
Yeah.
you're just amazing. I love how God uses you, and I love how God has used you in our life, and the different things. I was just like looking over there, and there's a piece of art that she did for sharing Down syndrome to help support art projects for children with Down syndrome and stuff. And my kids are in that and stuff, so it's really cool. So it is.
And the same here. I mean, when I felt alone, there were only 2 couples that knew what it was like, and Cindy and Kevin were one of those couples that always had like a worse story than I had. It always became, I would say what happened, and she'd be like, "Oh, that's nothing. Such and such did this," and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's worse. Thank you for making me feel better."
It's funny. Well, our time's getting short, and I don't want this to cut off because it keeps cutting off because we keep talking and stuff. But I don't know about you, Jody. Well, I do think I know, but we'd love to have you back, Launa, especially to talk about trauma and
I would love
everything
to.
that you've learned about that. I think that would really benefit our listeners and those mamas and dads that are here. So,
do you have an essential oil that you have used with your kids that has been helpful?
The one that comes to mind is lavender. I used to rub it on the bottom of my children's feet before bed, and then they would smell the lavender when we would talk about the Lord, or we'd tell us a Bible story before bedtime, and then we would always pray. So recently, my almost 16-year-old smelled the lavender, and he said, "Mom, that brings back so many good memories," and so that was really sweet. And so, and I'll kind of close with this, is I said, do you remember what I always said to you before bed? And he said, "Yes, you always said, I'm going to be a mighty man of God someday." And so that's all wrapped up in that lavender smell.
Yeah, that is amazing.
And I love how essential oils trigger those senses, and they help with the healing of trauma, and they help with the bringing out those good things that our kids need to know and feel and remember.
Yes. And they say, actually, in memory and with Alzheimer's patients, it's the sense of smell is what triggers memory more powerfully than anything else.
Yeah, I agree.
It's crazy.
Okay, so Launa, tell us what your favorite verse is, a verse that maybe God has given you during this whole process.
Well, wow, since we talked about the little pieces of pottery, I think I'll use one from Isaiah, and it is, "Bread grain is crushed, but it is not threshed endlessly." So
That's
Yes.
that really spoke to me.
Yeah. That is, you. It's not constantly. We go through a crushing. We go through that molding.
But it's for a purpose.
Yeah.
And we don't stay in that season forever.
Right.
Yes.
God does give us a break before the next season.
Right.
Yeah.
And the
He
next
does.
season always
Exactly.
looks different and may still be stressful, but may not be.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, we have loved having you
Thank
with
you.
us, and we are going to pray for you right now.
Thank
And
you.
your family. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for this time that we got to spend with Launa, and thank you for the children that you have blessed her and her husband with. Thank you that you have given them the special ability to be the parents that you wanted them to be for these children of yours. And I pray that you will continue to give them guidance and shower them with blessings as they are continuing to raise their children. I pray for the moms that are listening and the dads that you would also give them guidance as well in the moment that they're in right now, and help them to be able to get through that moment, challenging or not, and be able to shine for you and all that you would have us to do as we share your love with others. Thank you again for this time together. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
So where can our listeners find you at?
Well, my husband Marty and I have an organization called Global Impact, and it's at globalimpactworldrelief.org, and you can see some of my artwork on there. I also am on Etsy, so it's Poetry Art by Launa. You could just do a search on Etsy, or even just do a Google search. There's plenty that'll come up.
Yeah.
And as we're sitting here in your studio and I'm looking around, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't even see the actual poetry, because the art is beautiful, but every line in this art is words. Mm-hmm. You'll have to go around and look. It's incredible. Everybody, you guys need to look her up. It is pretty cool. I have a few pieces of art by Launa in my house.
Your house?
Yeah. She does one that's a family tree,
yes.
And we finally finalized our
finished.
Yeah,
it.
So now I can frame it, mat it, and everything, and get it all. Because she kept adding people. We kept getting more kids. So
now you're done, right?
Yeah, we are done.
Unless God tells you something different.
You know what?
I was just thinking when I was running this morning that you don't have one that begins with C.
Yeah, we do Cooper.
You're right.
We are.
You're
2
done.
E's, 2 A's, 2 J's,
That's
2
right.
B's, 2
You got
K's,
it.
and 2
Yeah,
C's.
they're finished.
Mm-hmm.
So we're done. And then with, which these guys don't know, but with Kevin's diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's, that is definitely, that's the exclamation point on the end of our story there, which is good with us. 10 is enough, I would think.
10 is enough. That's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you can find me at jodyrandolph.com, and if you need more adoptive mom support, you can check out my coaching of Chaos to Calm, and you can find Cindy at
nevereasyalwaysgood.com. Real life with Down. Right now it still says Down syndrome, and I'm sorry.
Life with adopted children.
With adopted children, with everything. It's just real life. But it's not really everybody else's life. It's my real life, so it's all good.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Bye
Bye-bye.
for now.
Bye.